In this video, we'll be looking at question 2.2 from 5CO03. You should have read the scenario and know that this question is asking you to discuss the steps and strategies for designing a fair and inclusive learning and development policy, as well as how to check if it's actually inclusive after it's been put in place. Just to be clear, this guidance shows you the methodology and approach, but you're responsible for the actual content, research, and conclusions. Make sure you do your own analysis and bring in your own evidence. With that said, let's walk through how to approach this step by step. First, let's look at what the question is really asking. When you see the command verb discuss, it means you need to go deeper than just listing or describing. You're expected to examine the steps and strategies in some detail, weighing up how effective they are. The focus is on how you'd actually design a fair and inclusive policy, and then how you'd go about checking whether it's genuinely inclusive once it's in action. Key words you'll want to keep in mind are fair, inclusive, design, and checking inclusivity. You don't need to write the policy itself, just talk through the processes and strategies you'd use to make sure fairness and inclusion are built in from the start and then reviewed after implementation. Now, this is important. Don't just describe what you do. You need to evaluate which strategies are actually going to have the most impact. For example, think about the different ways you could engage people. Maybe team discussions or anonymous surveys. What are the strengths or downsides of each? You could consider how making sure everyone, especially those directly affected, gets a say might lead to fairer results. It's also worth reflecting on possible challenges like unconscious bias or some staff not having equal chances to give feedback. So, ask yourself, how would you tackle these issues in your process? Use language that shows you're weighing things up and try to see things from different perspectives across the organization. When you're planning your answer, aim for a structure that's clear and logical. You might start with a brief explanation of why inclusive design in learning and development is so important for the organization, especially if the scenario talks about inconsistent or unfair practices. For your main analysis, split it into two parts. First, strategies for designing an inclusive policy. Here you could talk about things like facilitated discussions, anonymous feedback channels, or structured consultation activities. Then, briefly evaluate, how do these really help surface different needs and viewpoints? Second, look at ways to check inclusivity after the policy's in place. Maybe formal surveys, informal feedback sessions, or analysing participation data. Again, think about what each method would actually tell you and where there might be gaps. To wrap up, make a short, clear judgment. Why is ongoing evaluation and being open to feedback so critical? Link it back to the scenario's need for fairer practices, so you're always tying your analysis to the bigger picture. Now, let's talk about using the assessment criteria. You'll want to focus your response on strategies that involve stakeholders, enable staff voice, and gather feedback effectively. Take a look at the specific mechanisms mentioned in the assessment criteria. Think discussions, email exchanges, consultation activities, both informal and formal feedback. Reflect on how each of these strategies helps tackle fairness and inclusion. Use them as your main categories for analysis, and make sure you're linking each point directly to the question. Next, think about bringing in academic sources, usually 2 or 3, that specifically relate to inclusive people practice design and evaluation. Paraphrase these ideas to back up your analysis and show how the theory supports your chosen strategies. Make sure you include in-text references in Harvard style, and remember that only the in-text citations count towards your word count. Connect your analysis to the scenario. If the case study talks about problems like lack of standardization or previous employee complaints, use these as examples to show why your chosen inclusive strategies are needed. For example, involving both managers and staff in the design process might help address inconsistencies and fairness issues that have come up in the organization. Here's what you need to remember if you're aiming for high marks. Don't just list lots of strategies, analyze a few in depth. Pick the ones that fit best with the scenario and the assessment criteria, and really build your argument with logic and evidence. Remember, inclusivity can be complex. What works well for one group might not for another. Show that you understand the need to adapt your approach as feedback comes in. Finally, keep your writing clear and concise. Make sure each paragraph makes a strong, relevant point. Avoid repeating yourself or adding unnecessary details. Always link your strategies back to the question, the assessment criteria, and the scenario, so every sentence is working towards your overall analysis. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, give it a like and subscribe for more practical walkthroughs. Check out our other videos in the series for more tips on tackling these questions.